Last night, while you were asleep, your brain did something extraordinary. It generated an entire world, complete with people, places, sounds, and emotions, out of nothing. You moved through it as if it were real. You felt things. You believed it. And then you woke up and almost all of it was gone. You've done this every night of your life, thousands of times. And in April 2024, at the annual meeting of the Cognitive Neuroscience Society in Toronto, a researcher named Remington Mallet, a postdoctoral scientist at the University of Montreal who has spent his career studying nothing but dreams, stood up in front of his colleagues and said something that should have shocked everyone in the room. Understanding how dreams are generated and what their function might be, if any, is one of science's biggest open questions right now. If any, we have sequenced the human genome. We have photographed a black hole 55 million light years away. We have built machines that can diagnose cancer from a single drop of blood. And the thing your brain does every single night without fail for your entire life. We still don't know what it's for. We don't know why it happens. We don't know what it means. We can't even reliably watch it while it's occurring. And here's the thing that nobody tells you. We've been trying to answer this question for over a century, and we are barely closer than when we started. Here's the paradox. Sleep itself is not mysterious. Not anymore. In the last 30 years, neuroscience has mapped sleep with extraordinary precision. We know it cycles in roughly 90-minute intervals. We know deep, slow-wave sleep consolidates factual memory. We know your immune system rebuilds itself during those hours. We know your brain's waste clearance system, the glymphatic network, flushes metabolic toxins while you sleep, including beta amyloid, the protein implicated in Alzheimer's disease. We know what sleep does. We know what happens to you when you don't get it. Matthew Walker, a neuroscientist and professor of psychology at the University of California, Berkeley, spent a decade synthesizing this research and published it in 2017 in a book called Why We Sleep. His central argument: sleep is the single most effective thing a human being can do to reset brain and body health. The science behind that claim is solid, but Walker's book contains a puzzle buried inside its certainty. The chapters on dreaming are the most honest chapters in the book, because Walker, one of the most informed sleep scientists alive, is forced to admit that the specific function of dreaming, the mechanism by which REM sleep produces the experience of a dream, and the question of whether that experience itself serves any purpose at all, remain genuinely, deeply, embarrassingly unresolved. Not partly resolved, not we're getting there. After more than a century of scientific investigation, we still cannot answer the question a child asks on any morning after waking: why did I dream that? The scientific study of dreaming didn't truly begin until 1953, when University of Chicago graduate student Eugene Aserinsky was running an EEG machine on sleeping subjects and noticed something nobody had documented before: periodic bursts of rapid eye movement behind closed eyelids. When he woke subjects during these episodes, they almost always reported vivid dreams. He published the discovery with his supervisor, Nathaniel Kleitman, in the journal Science. REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, had been found, and for the first time, scientists had a physiological handle on the dreaming state. The assumption that followed seemed obvious: REM sleep equals dreaming. If you could study REM sleep, you were studying dreams. For the next 25 years, almost all dream research was built on that equation. Then, in December 1977, two Harvard University psychiatrists named J. Allen Hobson and Robert McCarley published a paper in the American Journal of Psychiatry that rewrote how science understood the whole question. Their paper was called "The Brain as a Dream State Generator." Its argument was radical. Dreams are not meaningful narratives generated by a mind processing emotion or memory. Dreams are noise. During REM sleep, the brainstem fires random electrical signals upward, specifically bursts called pontogeniculo-occipital waves, originating in the pons and spraying through the visual and motor cortex like static. The forebrain, the rational story-making part of your brain, receives this random firing and does the only thing it can. It tries to make sense of it. It constructs a narrative. That narrative is your dream. Hobson and McCarley called this the activation synthesis hypothesis. The dream isn't a message. It isn't a memory. It isn't a wish. It's the brain making the best of a bad job, as one later paper described it, trying to synthesize coherence out of random biological noise. The hypothesis was enormously influential, and it immediately generated a counterattack that has never stopped. Here's what most people don't realize about the activation synthesis hypothesis. It was challenged not by a return to Freud, not by mysticism, but by the patients who couldn't dream at all. In the 1990s, a South African neurologist named Mark Solms began systematically studying patients with localized brain lesions, people who had suffered strokes or injuries to specific small regions of the brain. He found something Hobson's model couldn't account for. Some patients had lost the ability to dream entirely. Their REM sleep was intact. Their brainstem was firing normally. Their eyes moved. Their physiology showed every marker of the dreaming state. But when woken, they reported nothing. Blank. No dream. The damage in these patients was not in the brainstem, not in the region Hobson's model identified as the generator of dreaming. It was consistently in the forebrain, specifically in a region involving dopamine pathways connected to motivation, craving, and goal-seeking behavior. Solms published his findings in a 1997 book, The Neuropsychology of Dreams. His conclusion: dreaming is not generated by the brainstem firing random signals. Dreaming is generated by motivational and emotional systems in the forebrain, systems tied to desire, memory, and meaning. The brainstem doesn't produce the dream. It may simply turn the lights on. Something else writes the story, but here's where it gets strange. Solms' finding doesn't resolve the question of what that story is for. It only relocates the machinery. If dreaming originates in dopamine-driven motivational circuits, what is it doing? Is it rehearsing desires, processing fears, constructing a model of future scenarios? All of these hypotheses have been proposed. None has been definitively confirmed. Walker himself in Why We Sleep proposes that REM sleep functions as overnight therapy, a neurochemical window during which the brain reprocesses emotionally charged memories in the absence of noradrenaline, the stress hormone, allowing the emotional sting of difficult experiences to be gradually stripped away. The idea is elegant. The supporting evidence is suggestive. But as Walker is careful to note, the mechanism is not proven. It is a hypothesis, one of many. As of the Cognitive Neuroscience Society's 2024 meeting, the field's honest summary of its own progress is this: we know dreams influence waking life. We can't yet say how. We can't say why. We can't even reliably record what someone is dreaming while they're dreaming it, not even close to solved. On the morning of August 23, 1965, a 23-year-old laboratory assistant at the National Institutes of Health named William Dement, who would go on to found the Stanford University Sleep Research Center and become one of the foundational figures of modern sleep medicine, woke up in genuine terror. He had dreamed in vivid and specific detail that he had cancer. A doctor had examined an X-ray in the dream and pointed to a large shadow on his lung. The diagnosis was unambiguous. The fear was total. He lay awake afterward, heart still pounding, convinced the dream was a sign, convinced his body was trying to tell him something. He considered calling his physician. He considered making an appointment that morning. He didn't. And over the following weeks, as no symptoms appeared, he concluded the dream was nothing. A product of anxiety, perhaps, or random neural noise, or some emotional preoccupation he hadn't consciously acknowledged. There was no cancer. Dement spent the next 5 decades studying sleep. He helped establish that sleep deprivation is a medical emergency. He helped identify the relationship between REM sleep and dreaming. He wrote the foundational textbook. He trained an entire generation of sleep researchers, and he never resolved in his own scientific work the question of what his cancer dream had meant, whether it meant anything, whether the terror he felt in those first waking moments, completely real, completely bodily, indistinguishable from the terror of an actual diagnosis, had any origin beyond random noise in a brainstem he couldn't control. He died in 2020 at the age of 91. His question is still open. The honest reason science can't explain dreaming is not a failure of effort or intelligence. It is a fundamental methodological problem that makes dreams uniquely resistant to investigation. Every other phenomenon studied by neuroscience can be observed from the outside. You can scan a brain while it solves a math problem, while it processes grief, while it recognizes a face. The experience correlates to a measurable signal. The researcher and the subject share a world, but dreams are private in a way that nothing else in neuroscience is private. Researchers at The Conversation, summarizing the state of the field in January 2024, put the problem plainly. Scientists can classify whether a person is asleep and what stage of sleep they're in, but this physiological data does not tell them whether the sleeper is dreaming, let alone what they're dreaming about. The researcher has no access to the dream experience as it happens. They are forced to rely entirely on the dreamer's account upon waking, with no guarantee that the account is faithful to what actually occurred. Memory of dreams begins to degrade within seconds of waking. By the time a subject has opened their eyes and oriented themselves, significant portions of the dream are already gone. What they report is a reconstruction of a reconstruction. The data is compromised at the source. Remington Mallett's work at the Cognitive Neuroscience Society's 2024 conference was focused specifically on this problem, developing new methods to communicate with dreamers while they are still inside the dream, using eye signals from lucid dreamers to transmit yes or no information in real time. The work is promising. It also underscores how far from basic understanding the field still is. The most innovative dream research in 2024 is focused not on what dreams mean, but on how to watch them at all. We spent 70 years building a science of sleep. We are still, in many ways, at the very beginning of a science of dreaming. Tonight, roughly 2 hours after you fall asleep, something will happen that no laboratory has ever fully witnessed. Your brainstem will begin firing, your eyes will move, your motor cortex will generate movement signals that your body, mercifully paralyzed by a separate neural mechanism, will not carry out. And somewhere in the space between those signals and the story your forebrain makes of them, something will appear, a place you've never been, a person you've never met, a feeling so specific you'll wake with it still on your skin. Hobson spent 40 years arguing it means nothing. Solms spent 40 years arguing it means something. Both of them built careers on the question, and neither of them answered it. Freud thought he had answered it in 1899. He hadn't. Mallett in Toronto in April 2024 did not promise an answer. He said only that the tools are getting better, that it might now be possible to find something, that before he can tell his colleagues what dreams mean, he needs to convince them that dreams can be studied at all. That's where we are, a century of effort, the most sophisticated brain imaging technology in human history. And the thing your sleeping mind builds every night out of nothing dissolves before you can look at it directly. Every morning you wake, something extraordinary has just ended. You were there for all of it. You remember almost none of it. And neither, despite everything, does science.